So I want to welcome everybody to the Asian Supervisor Network meeting. The goal that we have with this meeting is to bring more visibility of supervision in Asia, but it's a really global network. We have people here from all over the world, including our speaker today, Alex from South Africa. So it's early for him. He woke up really early to join us, 5 in the morning. So thank you for making that effort in being here with us today. And if you want in the chat box to write where you're calling from, so everybody gets to know you. One of our goals in this meeting is to build relationships with other supervisors from all over the world. Sometimes we have people who are coaches, they may not be supervisors. Everybody's welcome. But the target are supervisors, and to bring more community and learning from each other and support each other. That's the reason why I always ask the participants to join us in doing a session. So we still have some openings for this year. If you're available, let me know. If you want to do a session before we finish, there's only 3-4 more months. We already have somebody in September, so we need somebody from October, November, and December. So, though in December, we usually don't have any because it's the end of the year and most people are busy. But I would love to see everybody presenting. So just let me know if you want to do that. And we had Paul did it last month. So Paul, thank you for coming back this month. And everybody's welcome to do that. So Alex, what would you like people to know about you?
I'm going to include that as part of my presentation. So how about we jump in?
Sounds good. The only thing that I want to say about Alex is that we are together in a chain. And in this chain, we have people that supervise the other people and other people supervise you. And I have been in the chain for 8 years, I think. Alex is a new member in this chain. And from this whole chain that there are like 15 supervisors, Alex is one of my favorite ones. He's an amazing supervisor. So I want to give you credit. And really love working with you. I think you were a great supervisor for me. So I'm very glad you're here.
Thank you, Damien. It's been lovely to do the work with you. So let me start by sharing, and welcome to everyone. So today we're going to have a look at a relational approach to both coaching and supervision. So feel free to interpret whatever I'm sharing with you in whatever field it is that's most appropriate. What we're going to look at today, just some introductions, forming the outlines of the contract, working together, an overview of the relational work. There'll be an opportunity for you to experience some relational work with me. We'll reflect on our learning, and then we will say goodbye. So about me, I am from South Africa. I live in a village called McGregor. It's about 2 hours away from Cape Town in the Winelands mountainous area. It's really beautiful here where I am. I enjoy motorcycling, music of many different genres, and I enjoy various kinds of cooking. My background is quite different to what I do now. I'm an ex-military flying instructor. I flew both helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft, and I was a military display pilot for a period of time as well. I started my coach training in 2007, and I have a diploma in coaching and coach supervision. So, this is a relational workshop, and we have a little bit of time just to introduce ourselves, to connect. I would like to know just what it is that interests you about this topic and perhaps where you're from. I know you've put this in the chat box, but using our voices adds a little bit of extra magic to connecting. So I'll stop sharing at this point and ask you to unmute yourselves and just take 30 seconds or so to check in. Who'd like to start?
I'll start, Alex. Yep. It always happens, doesn't it, Elizabeth?
Yep. Go ahead, Pauline.
Thanks. I'm Pauline, and I'm based in Australia, but I wasn't born here. I've been here for a long time, 33 years. And the reason I'm interested in being here is I often consider myself a very relational coach. And when I saw the topic, Alex, I thought, oh, maybe somebody could help me understand if I really am. I wanted to understand it from another lens. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Pauline.
I'm Elizabeth. I'm in Tokyo. I'm from the UK originally, and I've been in Japan and Asia for about 38 years now. And I came just because the topic caught my eye and I was curious as to what's going to emerge. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Welcome, Elizabeth.
I'll jump in. Hello, everyone. I'm Paul from Los Angeles in the States. I became a psychotherapist long before coaching. I was a single guy, and I was supposedly doing relationship therapy. And the way I rationalized it was that it was all about relationships, everything we have. And now I do a lot of work around relationships with physical objects, around how we relate to those and how they relate back to us. So I saw the topic and thought it'd be interesting to be here. And of course, see you, Alex.
Yeah, it's lovely to see you again, Paul. And it's so interesting, a relationship with objects. That's certainly part of this. Welcome. Who else?
I'm Tim Sprague. I'm from Sydney. I've done the coaching supervision course at Oxford Brookes, and I like the seven-eyed model. So that bit of relational stuff is, there's the coach, there's the individual, and there's a relationship between them in coaching that space. So, and I'm hoping that this expands my view of that.
Yeah, and if it doesn't, feel free to challenge Tim so that we can explore that. Welcome.
I'll go next, and I'm recently starting some work in supervision coaching around social justice. And so since relational coaching really focuses on this relationship between the coach and the coachee, or even in supervision, the supervisor and the supervisee, it's a very, I think, almost intimate relationship when you're dealing with very intense subjects like social justice. So I wanted to just delve into the subject matter a bit more.
Yeah. And it fits nicely with what Tim was talking about, the seven-eyed model in terms of the wider system. Thank you, Sunny. Welcome.
I could go next. I'm Simchu from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I was drawn to the topic because it's relationship, and it's about people in terms of heart-centered and person-centered coaching and supervision. I'm noticing a lot of clients are coming in with emotions and connecting to who they are and discovering who they are. And I'm wanting to support them in that sense also. And as we have, they relate to themselves and how they relate to, how are they relating to others to become better leaders. And the same thing also with supervision, we notice that coaches come in and find themselves sometimes not even able to relate to themselves. So that dimension is something I've been curious about and wanted to hold the space for.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Welcome, Simchu.
Thanks, Alex.
Scott, what struck me about you was your lovely deep voice. How about you check in?
That's very kind. No, I'm curious because I saw that relational coaching and I thought it was redundant. And, one of the things we try to emphasize to new trainees is the relationship is more powerful than the tools you use. It's the relationship, stupid, right? That old Bill Clinton quote. And so when Damien put this out there, I thought, okay, well, maybe there's another angle on this that would really be helpful for me to learn.
Thank you. Welcome. Sraban.
I don't know much about the relationship coaches, but always I feel coaching and supervision at the moment, what the client or the supervisor bring in. But I'm trying to look at it, how these tools or systems approach of the can fit into that, and whether it should overshadow what the client or supervisor is looking forward.
Great question. Please excuse me if I don't pronounce your name correctly. Is it Jean Elvire?
Yes, it is. Thank you. Good morning. Sorry that I'm a little bit late calling from France. When I hear relational coaching, then I think about Eric Dehaan, because he's the one who really I knew relational coaching with. So I was interested to come this morning because of the diversity of the approach. And I'm very curious to participate this morning.
Welcome.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So I think the one thing that Eric Dehaan and I have in common is our Dutch heritage, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't think that you have in common with Jean Elvire is that you won't wake up to be here at 5 in the morning.
Yes, welcome. Yes. Have you got an extra strong cup of coffee as well?
Thank you. Thank you. I don't drink coffee. Thank you.
Okay. Let me share it on. Okay, so I'm going to propose an agreement to keep our work safe and ethical today. If you share something that needs resolution, please be mindful of the depth that is achievable in the time and the format that we're working with today. And regarding confidentiality, please keep, if you share them, if you share a case, please keep your client names private, and anything shared with you by others in this presentation must be kept confidential or not shared outside of the session. If you're uncomfortable with something that is happening or has happened here, please name it so that we can address it. And if you need support after the session, keep an existing resource in mind, so your own supervisor, your coach or therapist, and you're very welcome to contact me afterwards if that's more appropriate to do.
Alex, we're seeing from the facilitator presentation. Do you want us to see that? Or do you...
No, I don't want you to see that. I want you to see.
They were looking at your notes, so I thought you may
want to...
No.
Okay. Thanks for highlighting that. Okay. No, still not. This is the one of the issues I face with something that's relatively new to me, working with two monitors. There we go. Do you see the proper slideshow now? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So to frame your own learning for today, take 2 minutes or so to formulate a question around a client relationship that you're curious about. This might be a coachee or a supervisee. It could even be a colleague or some other kind of relationship that is important. Maybe something has happened that you struggle to make sense of, or that is posing as a challenge to your relationship. This might also be not about a person, but an aspect of your practice. or a task? I'll just give you a minute to do that. It's looking like most people have finished making a note. So keep this question in mind as we go through the presentation. And this is something that we'll take a moment to reflect upon later. So before today, you may have had no idea who I was, or you may have created some idea about who I am, what I'm all about based on the marketing of the event. And then I introduced myself as part of the presentation, and you've had an experience of me up until this moment in time. And take a moment to reflect on how you imagined me when I introduced myself. What images of me came to mind? Who did I remind you of? What expectations did that set for you about me? What thoughts emerged? What feelings emerged, emotional or physical? Maybe something stood out to you about my bio. So I tried this with ChatGPT, and this is who ChatGPT thinks I am. And I actually went through a couple of iterations until I got something that looked a little bit closer to who I think I am as well. The first one was me baking cakes, and then I thought that's not really the kind of cooking that I enjoy the most. I enjoy a good barbecue. So let's have a look at some of the fundamental aspects of relational work. And I'm going to start with the bigger picture, so the philosophy. The focus on relational work is on the relationship that clients have with you as practitioner. And this serves as a window into the world of the client and the relationships that they have with others as well as task. So the age-old coaching maxim of coach the person, not the topic, really applies here. It's about the experience that the practitioner has internally in relation to the client and the meaning that we make of that in the work together. And then seeing that as having meaning in relation to the client's relationship with other people, tasks, life, or specifically the session goal that they've brought to do the work with you. So I'm going to talk about a couple of core concepts here. These phrases may or may not be familiar to you, and it's not a biggie if they're not. I'm going to describe them to some degree, and we'll have an opportunity to review them in more depth a little bit later. But this is just to give you an idea of the kind of language that one might be using in supervision to explore these phenomena. Excuse me. So to start with, I worked with a practitioner some time back, Alesh Zivkovic, and he said something like, the practitioner who does not work with transference is controlled by the transference. So whether it is acknowledged or not, it's going to be happening and it's going to be influencing the work that we do together with our clients. One of the ways that we can start to tune in with what's happening in this psychological space is empathic attunement. So this means using our capacity, our human capacity for empathy, to notice subtle things like feelings, moods, modes, approaches unfolding in the work with our clients. Our clients will engage with us in ways that are based on their past. So they may take the face of someone from their past and put it onto us in the present. That is transference. Our response to that is our counter-transference. And this may manifest in different ways. In our thinking, in our physical or emotional feeling, and in our behavior. We may start to find ourselves in a dynamic, a behavioral dynamic, or a relational dynamic with the client that matches the relational dynamic they have with people outside of the session. And that's parallel process. We can respond to that out of awareness of what's happening and using our skills as practitioners, and that would be positive parallel process. So making it, interrupting or making a change to the dynamic that's getting in the way for the client. Projection. This is about experiences that the client struggles to make contact with within themselves, and they put them on us as practitioner, or they put them on others. If they're putting them on others, they're also likely to put it on us. And so when we notice this, again, it's a window into the client's world. And if we start to act on those projections through projective identification, we start to actually manifest the behaviors that the client is projecting onto us. If they tell us we're angry, and this is not actually something for which there's a stimulus in us, then that may be the client's anger. If we start to act on that anger, if they're pressing us, if they're painting us into a corner in the relationship, this may be ways in which we can identify projective identification. Let's have a look at a typical session flow as a comparison between relational work and other traditional ways of coaching which are not relational. So on the left is the non-relational styles. There'll be a beginning, middle, and end to a session in which at the beginning we're establishing goals, doing some exploration, and then reflecting on learning, planning some next action steps or approaches. In a relational approach, the emphasis at the start is not so much on the content or the topic or the goal, but it's on establishing the relationship. And often this is counterintuitive to traditional coaching training, but it works in that the client's approach to their topic is starting to manifest already in the relationship. The moment they step in the door, it's happening. When we can notice how that's happening and reflect on it, relate it to their goal, this is the exploration that takes place in the middle of the session. And then reflecting on it, what is the learning about self and relationship to task or relationship to other, and what new ways of behaving can the client start to bring into their lives outside of the session. So let's see where you each are. I'm going to stop sharing the slideshow shortly. What's coming up for you as a point of interest? It might be a specific aspect that I've mentioned. That's something for you to name and continue to explore as we go. And then from here onwards, we also have an opportunity for you to experience will have a relational experience either with me, or we could do breakout rooms. It's quite open. It might be a very small boundaried piece of supervision, or we could work with the counter-transference by you sharing a case with me, or someone could choose to do a role play with me. So let me stop sharing here. Where are you with this? Tim, may I ask you, apologies if this is putting you on the spot, you had a question about the seven-eyed model. And I'm wondering what's coming up for you about that.
I'm trying to interpret that now in terms of those transference issues you talked about around rejection, parallel process, and the question is how aware I am of those transference processes when I'm in relationship with a coachee.
Is it a generic question or specific to an experience that you've had?
I guess in specific, there's a coachee who is significantly younger than me and around the age of my children. And so there are maybe even transference issues from me to her immediately, and possible and probable transfers issues from her to me as a parent.
Yeah.
And I'm aware that they're going on, but I guess the question is, how do I determine, or how do I manage understanding the degree that they're going on?
Great question. Okay. Thanks for sharing. Is there anyone else who would like to share what's coming up as a point of interest on the theme?
Mine's really a variation of Tim's. It seems the work hinges on the coach's ability to notice the dynamics that are happening in the relationship, and then with the relationship with outside that. So, how do you see it?
Yeah. And do you have ideas about that, how, Scott?
I guess intuitively, and so I was like, well, maybe the activities you suggested. Let's bring a case study. Let's do the role play, and let's experience it in this group, and then talk about what's happening.
Yeah. So I think from my experience, at least, the one way I found useful is through supervision. I can start to see things from that meta perspective that supervision allows. And then through just that continuous training that happens implicitly in supervision to notice those more subtle dynamics, I can start to notice it happening immediately in the session. So I can catch it a little earlier. Anyone else? Well, then we have an opportunity to do 15 minutes of either role play or someone sharing a case or a piece of supervision.
Yeah, that would be great.
Anyone like to?
That would be great
Yeah.
if we can do more like a role play. If somebody can bring something to supervise, can be one of the two people who presented something about the relationship, or somebody else who wanna take this opportunity to work with you for a few minutes. You know, that would be whoever chooses to do that will be lucky to have the opportunity. So
I'm happy to do that if you wanted with the one that I presented.
Yeah, great, Tim. Let me pin you so that you look.
you want me to do that for you?
Front and foremost.
I can do that. I can do that for both of you.
Ah, yeah.
So,
Thank you. Yeah,
so
that
I can
would
do
be
that for you
great.
too.
Thanks,
So
Damien.
here you are now. We have two of you big in the screen.
Okay.
Do you want to us to turn off the cameras, or it doesn't matter to you? Do you want to look at us small in the top, or do you want to just us to turn off our cameras? What is better for both of you?
What's your preference, Tim?
Well, I'm happy with it like this, but
okay, great. So can I do a little bit of contracting with you? The session is being recorded. It will be made available publicly, and it's useful to just bear that in mind in terms of how much you share about yourself and the case. What would be the most useful thing to come out of this exploration for you?
I think the issue that's forming in my mind around understanding the amount of transference or the level of the relationship is how and when to share my case conceptualization with the person I'm supervising. That includes the transference.
So your client, let me check if I understand you right. Your client is a supervisee?
Yes.
Okay. And you eventually want to share with them your understanding of the case, including information about the level of the transference that could be happening
I'm
either way.
observing and testing that with her.
Yeah. Okay. And it's based on what sounds like a generational age difference. So, yeah. All right. So you've noticed, I'm imagining, at least the potential for this because of the age difference between you and the client.
Yes.
Okay. What else have you noticed? If you maybe bring the client to mind, what comes up for you?
That some of her behaviors and my perceived level of her development matches some of the features in my kids.
And I noticed what looks like the start to a smile there, as you said, that it reminds you of your kids.
Yeah.
What's the overlap there that made you smile?
Well, the overlap is there are some things where they think they understand the world, and it's a product of their level of understanding rather than their total understanding. So they understand it at the level they're at, but there may be levels above that that they haven't got yet.
Sure. And what, if any, approaches to your children have you noticed yourself doing with the client?
I've noticed myself watching me going into care mode a little bit rather than coaching mode. So just noticing that there's a risk of me doing that I'm looking after them and telling them they're not in these words, but they're a good kid and they're doing okay, as opposed to saying, I'm wondering where you could improve on that, for example. So I'm noticing myself catching myself on that occasionally.
Yeah. So it sounds like the two things that are looking for balance here is support and challenge with the client.
Yes.
And you're moving more into the supportive role.
Mm.
Yeah.
Plus also for their education and development, but also just for transparency, saying or asking questions like, I'm wondering how much of this reminds you of your parents and the relationship that they're in.
Yeah.
And or sharing that while we're working on this issue, I'm also aware that sometimes I'm thinking of you in this way.
Mm-hmm. So if I understand you correctly, part of the stimulus for the transference dynamic that's happening is your own children. And part of it
Yes.
might be this person's own parents.
Yes.
So that, yeah, right. I'd like to check out a hunch with you, or a question
Please.
based on a hunch. I'm wondering what's holding you back from sharing what you've noticed, because as you're sharing with me what you're noticing in the system, you sound quite clear about it.
I'm worried that it will change the relationship. That in sharing it and saying, sometimes I feel like I might be parenting you a bit, or at least coming from a parent perspective, that actually may either drive it more in that direction, because she may not have been thinking that and now she is. Or secondly, might drive her away and go, okay, well, I don't want a guy that thinks of me like a parent. I want somebody who thinks of me like a supervisor. So that may damage the supervision relationship. So I don't know how real they are. Probably not real at all, but they're fears in my head.
Yeah. I'd like to play back a version of what you said to me and check what you think about it.
Mm.
You have a concern that by bringing information into the conversation, it's going to disrupt the client's perception of things.
Yes. Yes. I'm already seeing that that's a bit bizarre, because almost necessarily it will.
Yeah, it's paradoxical, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What else is coming up?
That if I'm being honest in my supervision, I should be, and I agree with the position that transference is always present, that I should be making transference part of the conversation with her.
What opportunities lie on the other side of that sharing?
I think there is the ability to be more honest about what might be coming up in the relationship, which may, for example, stop her saying some things, or on my side, me challenging her in some ways. So I think there's an opportunity for more openness and directness on the other side.
Yeah, that seems reasonable to me as well. What else might be standing in the way of the sharing at this point?
Oh, so that would be my ego and my perception that I'm a great supervisor and I'm above transference and it shouldn't be going on. So I think there's a little bit of that as I'm thinking on it.
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah.
oh no, I don't do transference. I'm way above that. I'm so self-aware
yes.
that wouldn't happen.
Okay.
So I think yeah, there's probably a bit of that in terms of, and then there's a whole bit about caring about how I'm perceived.
Yeah. So if you were to look at these as like the equivalent of a force that's impacting your practice, what does that give you?
Oh, I'm not sure of the question. Football stats. I haven't used that analogy before.
It wasn't a great question.
It may have been for other people. I'm just not getting it.
No, let me try again. And now I'm also wondering about the role of my own ego because I got the question wrong. I think what I'm getting at is if you see the ego acting as a force on the approach you take with a client or your behaviors, but it's just an influencer. It's not necessarily something that's fundamental and controlling. I guess I was wondering if it gives you a little bit more sense of working with it differently.
Sure. So yeah, so I don't think it's the controlling principle of my coaching, thankfully. I don't think, I go into coaching to make sure that people think that I'm important and knowledgeable. So, but I do have a little bit of ego that leaks in. So I guess it's not leading to a total judgment that I'm coming from the wrong perspective. I think it's just saying that it's an influence that can come in. I've got to watch myself. And if I want to be effective, I need to be aware of what my ego is driving me to do. And not listen to it. And I don't mean Freudian ego, I mean ego in common parlance, the ideas that
I'm on the same page as you. So when you were talking a little earlier about the transference that's happening each way in this relationship that you brought, this sounds like what's called co-transference. You both have something in common and the transference is happening both ways. And I'm also starting to wonder if it might be the same with the function of ego, that part of it is natural to any human being having approaches or behaviors that are ego driven to some degree. And I'm also wondering if perhaps the client is stimulating that with you.
Yep. I think if I've got those two perspectives right, I think I like my kids to see me as high performing and intelligent, though every time I tell it, and see, I'm going to humor as a protection, but I'll do it anyway. But every time I tell a dad joke to them, they roll their eyes and I've lowered myself in their estimation. But I kind of want them to see me well, so I think there's that going on. But I think you're also saying if I'm being protective, there's a risk that bleeds into the coaching relationship or supervision relationship. And she may well not disclose some things because she doesn't want to look bad or not a good performer. And she might start becoming ego protective and will become less productive in the relationship because, hang on a second, we can't be vulnerable in this relationship. Well, at least the supervisor isn't. So maybe I shouldn't be. So I think that's the risk you're leading to as well, or that's what I'm taking from it.
Yeah, it's not at all what I was thinking of. I was just posing a possibility type question, but your insight strikes me as quite profound.
Yeah, and I don't think I've thought that thought before, so that's kind of cool.
Lovely. I also noticed
that
you doing something. I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, what did you notice?
You said I'm using humor as a protection mechanism, but I'm going to do it anyway. And what I saw you doing there was reflecting on a dynamic that's presently unfolding with awareness. So you still did.
Yep.
You still did it, but you did it with awareness.
Yes.
Similar to how you might find yourself in an emerging relational dynamic with the client and name it while it's happening.
Right. Yes. Yep. Gotcha.
You wanted to say something, and then should we do reflection and close off?
I've lost. I don't think I'd fully formed an idea, but that's fine.
Okay.
But this has been really useful. Thank you. Yeah.
You're very welcome. So what's new to you about yourself from our conversation?
I think the biggest thing, there's a few things, but the biggest thing is that last realization that my own defensiveness of my ego, from a reputational view of ego, may well mean that she is less open. And probably sharing, going back into the detail, there was a time when she said to me, we were working through a case, she said, "Oh, you're much better than this than me. And and you should just take my client." And her putting me in that elevated position, I think, is dangerous if I don't then show weakness myself, or not weakness, but vulnerability. Then she's more likely to stay in that position of I'm smaller, less capable. And I said to her, "You're right. You should give me all your clients." And then I said, "Oh, but I know this person who's better than me, so I should give her all my clients."
So using humor to illustrate a dynamic,
but also to try and show some weakness. Anyway, so but coming back to the debrief, a realization that my behavior and my protectiveness be infectious, I think, is the biggest thing I got from this.
Good. Anything else to wrap it up for you?
No, that's been really useful. Wow. Good. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's been lovely to have the conversation. Thank you. So let me come back to the group. Okay. Thank you, everyone. We have a couple of minutes left. I'd like to do a little bit of contracting for the next bit. So without going back into the piece at all, so we're not going to discuss Tim's case, but more an understanding of the relational dynamic and the use of the relational dynamic in our conversation. What are your reflections on that? Or perhaps even if you translate what you observed into your own learning, what's come up for you?
I think was very interesting for me in terms of relations, like when we identify something happening, maybe a part of us that is afraid of articulating in language, not knowing what will be the reaction and how will be received. So I was thinking about, just in general, not only about Tim's case, but what is the foundation of trust in the relationship? Or how we build to the relationship, to the place where we may feel more confident about taking some risks. So this is the question: how do we take risks when so what are the factors that we need to consider in these relationships to be able to take some risks?
Yeah, what you're bringing up for me, Damien, is a model from transactional analysis called time structuring. It describes the modes in which we engage in relationship and how the risk increases as we move to the next step. So the first one is withdrawal. That's not engaging with anyone. The first contact with the person is ritual. So these are the culturally specific ways that we make first contact. It might be a bow, a handshake. It might differ depending on age or the person's sex. So males and females may engage differently within a culture or between cultures. A hug and a kiss between friends doesn't necessarily happen in the workplace. And then pastimes, discussing things without engaging in them. Activities is actually engaging in them. You can see the level of risk increasing as we go down these steps. And then it hits intimacy, which is taking the risk of sharing, I'm noticing what I think might be transference happening in our relationship. Can we have a look at that? Or games, which is the unconscious replaying of these old dynamics. Good. Who else?
Alex, I'll comment just quickly. It's Pauline here. And the question that I'd written down for myself earlier that you had us put down, just observing what was happening here, Tim's that last comment about those things that we bring to our coaching or our supervision that we think are protective mechanisms, but bringing them to awareness has really helped me with the question that I had written down for this particular client. And I have to think many of us have that kind of thing going on for us. There are habits that we bring as a protective means. But just hearing Tim talk about, and as you guys were talking about, just bringing greater awareness to them, I see them now as a means for something that I can consciously not use, but maybe it will serve me instead of always being something that I'm wrestling with. So that was really useful for me and really did help in that reflective question that I wrote down.
Lovely, Pauline. Thank you. We've got a minute or two left. Would anyone else like to share learning?
I share something. I noticed it made me reflect back on my supervision training, where one of the principles that we worked from was dare to call it out. And this idea of sometimes we want to challenge, but there's something that's stopping us doing it. So that opportunity to reflect and think, well, what might be getting in the way here? Is it me? Is it the client? Is it something in the system? I found that a very helpful moment to kind of just, okay, what's really going on here? And when it first started as well, when you first started the session, I noticed, and this is perhaps a pattern that I have, I noticed I started to feel a bit overwhelmed by all the stuff that was suddenly coming into the space. But then as we stepped back a little bit, it kind of stopped, and there was I could take some deep breaths and kind of really be focused on what's really going on here for me as well in this moment. So I think that's a very interesting and very insightful demonstration. So thank you both, especially Tim, for being brave and volunteering there.
Yeah, perhaps this will have to be a closing comment. When you talk about calling it out, I think that can happen functionally, but if one does it with the mode of calling it out, it can land as quite harshly or as criticism for the recipient. So if you saw what I did with Tim, is I shared what I was noticing perhaps in his behavior, or I shared, okay, I have a hunch about something. So it's just sharing what phenomena I'm noticing happening within our relational space, as opposed to launching with a hypothesis. And that's not to say there's no room for hypothesis. I might say, I'm wondering if it's time to start doing some thinking about it. Then we move out of the supportive, humanistic function of the supervision triangle more into the developmental one, and we can start to do the thinking. And even then, I think the calling out happens in a much more gentle, equal way. Then I think, unfortunately, we're out of time. I would have loved to hear more about your learning. And Damien, thank you for the opportunity. It's been a lot of fun for me, and I've enjoyed the time meeting a group of people.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alex, for accepting. We're waking up early, like Jan Elvira. We appreciate you having you in this session with people from all over the world. This is really nice to have this space. Next month, we're going to have Naveen. Naveen is from India, but he lives in the US. But he put together a conference last month in Asia, where he brought people from different sectors, and the recordings are available. It's everything for free. So he's going to share some of the highlights of the conference. So if you can make it, it's always the same, the last Wednesday in the morning in Asia, Tuesday evening in the US. And the following months, we already also have Lynn and Martin, who did the presentation for the American Coaching Supervision Network this month. They are coming to this community to present group supervision, also the relational part